Philosophers have argued that war is the natural state of humanity. The Vol would likely agree. Ancient tribal conflicts, and the posturing which brought an end to the colonial order of Earth, they share a common heritage, the violence contained within the human spirit. Every frontier had been soaked with the blood of the pious and barbaric. Why should this, the interstellar frontier, be any different? Warfare tempered the human soul, made him resolute, aware of what he was capable of. If that drive were focused, great feats could be achieved. If not, chaos was certain. The Vol had their fair share of wars in the distant past, far more destructive than any humanity faced. A million-year history, blemished too by cycles of violence. Vol and human fleets met over the holy world, Sarudma, and together progressed towards the Ferragon system, where Raxathar activity was reported. Many had assumed that only high ideals would accompany humanity to the stars. It was now clear that the darkest parts of evolutionary heritage had not been so easily left behind. Welcome to Stellaris. Vessels designed for interplanetary patrol were quite outclassed in this interstellar arena. Sleek Vol destroyers dwarfed the Earth ships in scale and offensive capability, but the humans aboard fought with audacity, fortitude, and brazen recklessness which baffled, amused, and terrified the Vol. They were content to neutralize strategic targets and wait, but something called to the human warrior instinct. Something better left to the jungles and battlefields of antiquity. The draw of the hunter going for the heart. In the distant Wilcam system, a star draped in vibrant nebula, Yaulon vessels struggled to hold their own against the ferocity and bone-headed aggression of their attackers. But hope was well at hand. The Kelvin black hole was swiftly retaken. This was where Chairwoman Gouda had her encounter with the hostile aliens, and close to the Vol frontier. As the Allied fleet crossed the border, they met minimal resistance. Before long, ordnance made by the Ganymede conglomerate was testing the planetary defenses of an alien homeworld, and Martian commandos were readied for planetary invasion. The atom bomb had been a terror to his ancestors. Admiral Wolf thought from his high vantage point. Their radiant mushroom clouds had a certain beauty to them. Primal violence awakened. It was in this haze of tribalistic instinct that reports began to arrive of scouts unaccounted for. The Raxathar were on the move. Their response was swift and merciless. The fleet of Helios was only spared by the sacrifice of those aboard the station. True to their hunter's instinct, the Raxathar did not stop there. They pursued. Ferragon was to be the location of a Pyrrhic last stand. Human and Vol fought back to back in a vicious melee. Strategy broke down almost instantly. It was a brutal slog. Incendiary lasers and kinetic rounds formed a deadly web of destruction. The Vol flagship, Yantarad, took a battering and suffered critical damage. The Raxathar were nimble. Targeting became a game of chance. Panicked and desperate weapons fire tore through space. With dwindling firepower, the order was given to withdraw. With flagship destroyed, however, the Vol were slow to organize a retreat. Through this, the counter aspect of the human spirit, discovery and expansion, was not diminished. In Jehoual, a strange civilization was found. They inhabited a world long ago ravished by war. Its atmosphere still choked with soot and radioactive decay products. This species was not the instigators of that global war. They were the product. Genetic evidence suggests they had been a domesticated creature of the former dominant lifeform, forced to adapt to the unstable environment and quickly reach sapience. The planet's previous inhabitants had been a complex technological society until taken by a religious resurgence, the tenets of which followed the Grand Herald, foretold in the Testament of Omen, a dark scripture prophesizing the end of the world. Its details were impossible to decipher, but it would seem their prophecies had been self-fulfilling. Modern Jehoualians gave reverence to these scriptures, seeing themselves as the benefactors of a terrifying and dormant god. What they assumed to be magic was in fact the battered remains of their precursor civilization. Communication had been re-established with satellites and off-world infrastructure, under the pretext and understanding of gods in heaven. Elsewhere, a history far grander and more disturbing was beginning to unravel. Mechanical remains littered the nearby systems, designs reminiscent of those found on Ilphion 5A. This mysterious precursor was unknown to the Vol archives, though a glaring hole in records was noted around the estimated age of these relics. Taking massive influence from ancient science fiction mythos, these unusual autonomous constructs were named the Cybrex, a name which was quickly adopted at large. It appeared as though the Cybrex had been a robotic civilization, theorized to have been an automated pest control program with little to no thought given to the parameters of the word pest. Nor was due consideration given to how far the Cybrex might go to eradicate what it categorized as such. The Cybrex had committed to a campaign of eradication. Had they been successful? The gaps in Vol records suggested partially. Thinking minds flashed to the Permian mass extinction on Earth. Could that be just a coincidence? Many thought not. Furthermore, researchers gained a haul of information regarding the mysterious gateway which orbited the Gindor black hole. It was built by nanobots, designed by an unknown civilization. Preliminary relativistic investigations indicated the gate linked to a point outside the galactic disk. Perhaps a satellite galaxy or previously unknown star cluster. At the front, the admirals of the Coalition drew up a daring plan to retake the initiative and strike into the heart of Raxathar space. A bold attack was ordered, but the enemy had not been idle these past months. The warships of Earth and Mars fought with valor, but their armament was no match for the rigid defenses they encountered. Kinetic rounds and explosives tore through the flimsy hull of vessel after vessel. It would seem this attack had been foolhardy. It was only by the timely arrival of Vol reservists that the fleet of Helios survived. Their powerful focused energy beam weaponry made short work of Raxathar defensive structures. Ferragon was retaken. At this time, the Yaolon were also making a bold encroachment into their occupied territories. The Raxathar left no world unburned, no station was spared. Survivors were taken into servitude. Those few who remained spoke of unbearable cruelty. Propagandized images from the front hardened the resolve in all three Allied capitals to wipe this threat from the stars. In the Tazari system, the fleets of Vol and Jehoual turned together to face the aggressor. They were joined shortly by the fleet of Helios. As one, the Allies fought their common foe. A great many ships were lost, along with their crews. Vol, Yaolon, and humankind bled and lost together. Their eternal bond forged in fire. With resilience, stubbornness, and audacity, the Allied fleet was successful. There could be no diplomatic settlement with a creature like the Raxathar. They did not comprehend such a thing. Surrender was intolerable. A truce was not an option. The Raxathar knew nothing but to fight, hunt, and kill. A stalemate of equals, however, while deeply distasteful, was understood. Borders were re-established. The devastated Yaolon world returned, their traumatized and embattled populations glad to be free, but never again the same. The tripartite powers agreed that if any one of them were to be under attack, then all shall defend. Cooperation on strategy and technology, established during the war, continued. Peace was, for now, secured. Returning under a banner of victory, the Helios fleet was greeted as heroes and granted a triumphant parade over Saturn. With the Raxathar threat diminished, attention could turn back to exploration. A pristine tropical world promised an untouched natural landscape. That is until ruins were detected on the surface. Cybrex architecture. But this was unlike the remains found elsewhere. It was a preserve of some kind. Such a facility was uncharacteristic of the Cybrex, who had been thought quite content to exterminate without a second thought. Strange behaviours indeed. Elsewhere, an alien artifact was uncovered. It was written in a strange dialect, which researchers on Earth revealed to be an ancient and forgotten Vol language. Its form and functional similarities to the mythical angelic language Enochian could not be ignored. Vol representatives were quick to thank their human counterparts for recovering their sacred texts. Now was not the time to question Vol influence over human history. From Helios Station, a Vol colony ship had departed, headed for the Trappist system. Not the most creative by nature, the Vol chose to name their new world Trappist Prime. It would be, or so they claimed, the administrative capital for the Trappist sector. Further to a successful touchdown on Trappist Prime, Jehoual diplomats approached the Coalition Council with a proposition. A craggy Arctic world had been discovered on the borders of human space. The Jehoual were perfectly suited to this climate, and offered their services in exchange for presumed citizenship. They named their new world Safe Harbor, in honor of humanity's heroism to spare the Jehoual destruction. Investigations at Jehoual Prime had taken a curious turn. A colossal alloy hull was discovered buried under layers of radioactive sediment. This was the Grand Herald, an Ark ship intended to carry a portion of the population to safety. It was never launched, and lay mouldering for thousands of years, lost to time. Dr. Beneflower's crew soon discovered the vessel was not beyond repair. With a little skill and patience, the humongous frame could be lifted from the surface into orbit. Seeing their literal god ascend from the ground and into the sky, the present Jehoualians reached out. They were confused to see human faces on the devices they revered as prayer receptacles, but were ultimately accepting. Their ascension to the Coalition was soon at hand. Having faced death and the mystery of the cosmos together, it wasn't long before the Vol approached humanity with a curious idea. Federation. Greater integration of military, government, and institutions. With only a little persuasion, the Jehoual joined too. The tripartite pact was now officially allied and federated. Only time would tell if this union could last. Whoa! Holy fuck! What the?